Not My Family is a highly fictionalized, loosely autobiographical narrative that describes generational bad will, poor choices, financial malfeasance, and even murder. The generational craziness is propagated like a tidal wave, threatening to drown everything in the deluge. Secrets are buried deep in lies, pacts sealed in blood, the truth concealed unto death, just to exert some control. I hate rubberneckers. It's kind of like, or this book is kind of like rubbernecking. The 30-mile pileup or 30-car pileup on I-75. You want to look away, but you're drawn to the carnage. Join me as the protagonist progresses along self-discovery and she recreates her identity and she discovers how to go home again. Not My Family can be purchased at FeliciaBaxter.com or directly from the author. Just navigate to Facebook, look up Dale's Angels Inc. and click Buy Now for your autographed copy. Now, let's return to the podcast.
God of glory, Lord of love, hearts unfold like flowers before thee, healthy as the sun above. Now the clouds of sin and sadness drive our dark down away. Giver of immortal hands, fill us with the light. Fill us with the light. Oh, fill us with the light of day.
Welcome to another episode of TNFro is Reading. I'm your host, Felicia Baxter. Thank you for joining me as I explore new innovation in personal health and the business of medicine. As I continue to read and dream about Chatter books and Wineberry, I will actually be doing a reading that was rejected from Vocal Plus. It's a platform where you actually can get paid per so many thousand views. And I'll actually give you a little bit of insight and my feelings on that. My take on the 2020 election and the candidates, the invites and disinvites from the barbecue. And also, the disinvites also has to do with shady politics, and I'll explain that a little bit more. I'll go over my daily affirmations, and I'll also tell you about special offers that you can actually partake in by navigating to www.dalesangelsinc.com /the store, as well as navigate through the several pages of my robust website. And also, I started a little bit of a podcast reboot because I do not listen to no less than about 3 podcasts a week, and also discuss Black excellence. Don't expect the sequence of the podcast to keep to what I just spoke about, because this is my podcast. I have no sponsors, so I can go in any order that I want. But I do invite you along for the ride. Welcome to another episode of TNFro is Reading, and I'm your host, Felicia Baxter. And welcome to this part of the podcast. And I've realized just a couple of things as I record this portion of the show, that it's Tuesday, and there's absolutely nothing on TV. I am binge watching probably one of my favorite shows of all times, Will and Grace, because there's nothing on the television. I have a guilty TV binge pleasure also in watching all of the spinoffs of 90 Day Fiancé. I just can't get enough of that. But it also goes to show why I am so dedicated to publishing my podcast, because there's really nothing to entertain me. There's just a bunch of negativity on the news, other podcasts. So I need to just continue to read my books and entertain myself. But anyways, so this part of the podcast is one of my favorites, the disinvites and invites, my take on the 2020 Democratic lineup for president. There has been several things that have happened in the last week. Just a few days ago, there was the second of debates, and the lineup is Kamala Harris, JoJo, Buttigieg, Elizabeth, Bernie, Beto, and Corey. And there were a bunch of one-liners, but there was not a whole bunch of substance. They even dared to attack probably one of the most popular and the consummate example of what a president should be, President Obama's health care as well as immigration. And I don't think they attacked his foreign policy, but they went there, and I thought it was just stupid. So they absolutely had to backtrack, and they didn't go there, because President Obama still sounded like a president. In the last several days, we've had 3 major mass shootings. One at a garlic festival of all places. Another one in my old stomping state of Texas in El Paso. And this dumbass was actually targeting foreigners, he said. And that's what he actually posted in his manifesto. And then there was another attack in Ohio. And this dude actually killed his own sister. And they don't even know, besides being a member of what Charlemagne the God calls the Vanilla ISIS, they don't really know what his deal was. But it was very clear, because of the rhetoric that this guy had copied and pasted into his manifesto, the dude down in El Paso, who really doesn't need a name, and I won't name him. He basically said there were just too many Hispanics encroaching on his privilege. He had been unemployed for a number of months, and he was blaming it all on another race. Let's just back up. Number one, if you look at where his name comes from, I can almost bet the Latinos and every Native American was here before his stupid ass family. I'm just going to put that out there. And for him to actually blame someone else for his shortcomings is probably one of the dumbest things I've ever heard of in my life. There is an issue with and the need for gun control as well as better mental health because we got a bunch of homegrown terrorists rolling on the hate rhetoric that our dumbass in chief is spewing. That's the bottom line. And that is where all of the invites, all of the Democratic candidates, as well as those Democrats that are in Congress, they are focused on, and even as bipartisan. Some of the Republicans are like, enough is enough. This is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm not even going to pay homage or even comment on that teleprompted, I didn't write this speech that our so-called president spoke of today. It's really sad when a whole the senator of the state where a mass shooting was held, they don't even want him there. El Paso, you can't put too much over on Texans. Texans are like, you need to go and sit down somewhere. We don't want you, but your butt here. And because what he was saying was just so disimpassioned, and you knew he didn't write it, and you knew his speeches were what drove Crazy Man to drive 10 hours to light up the Walmart because he got lost. How crazy is that? You so wrong way, Teddy, that you actually get lost on your way to create mayhem, and so you just pick one just because they're there. And because your GPS is not working, you didn't take the time to update that mug. I just think it's just all ridiculous. And the time for hate is over. And we have got to stand up for what is right. And what is right is he needs to be removed from office. No, I don't think in this lifetime that he's going to be impeached. But the Democrats, independents, and whoever are going to have to show out. This cannot stand. We need real change now. And that's what all the candidates, everybody that I want to talk to at my barbecue, we all agree on that. And while the dumbass in chief actually is up to his shenanigans, it always seems like the ulterior motive is to cover up a bunch of crazy political shade. All of those citizens that beat up that guy in Cincinnati for protesting the anti-immigrant rhetoric of President or dumbass in chief, which trips me out because the same place that he had that Klan rally is in the same state where the mass shooting took place this weekend. Really? I don't think it was coincidental. And also, who needs to be voted off the island? The acting DHS Secretary McClellan. He don't have the balls to stand up to basically say that your commander-in-chief has a screw loose and he is inciting a riot, and he's the one that's making my job worse. Basically, I guess maybe he say I don't have to buy and I don't owe any of y'all anything because I'm only the acting secretary and I'm not putting my shit on, I'm only the acting secretary and I'm not going to jeopardize that. I'm just going to buy my time for another year and then I'm out. And then I've been listening to several different podcasts, and everyone's basically been saying the same thing. Our acting attorney general testified last week, or what's the week before last, and he didn't say anything outside of what wasn't redacted in the Mueller report. We're not going to be able to remove him by impeachment, but we are going to be able to vote his butt out of office, is the bottom line. And then if he gets brought up on charges, if his creditors don't get him to him first, once he's out, it'll all be good. It kills me that everything that he has decided, or he has worked overtime to dismantle, and his cronies, is going to be the very thing that's actually going to be his doing. And I honestly believe that. Most of the podcasts have been going in on R. Kelly. Basically, they were like me. What took us so long? We've been knowing for the last 30 years that he's been a pedophile. It's been very blatant, and all of his handlers have been complicit in the madness. Now that he's out of money, he can't bail himself out. He don't have the same clout. He don't have the same fame to basically weasel himself out of these federal charges. So good luck with that. And then there was a guy that, how do you leave your twins in a car? I know you're a social worker, but how do you forget about your children? That is just some of the craziest crap I've ever heard of. And then there's another dude right here in Chattanooga, basically the same thing. He left like 3 kids in the car, and his 11-month-old died. And the 2 kids survived, but I'm wondering what's the status of their brains. How do you just leave your kids in the car? How big of a rush are you in to leave them? And we all know how hot as fire it is here in the Southeast, and you forget about your car, your kids. Dude here got 20 to life. That dude Juan up in New York, in the Bronx, if you are not a citizen, you're going to get deported. I'm just saying. It's just that's just how we're going to have to roll, because you're dumb as hell. And even with all that negativity, I would like to end on a kudos in Black Excellence. There are a couple of kids also in the Northeast that are baking and donating the money to help their community, as well as Jaden Jefferson. He's an 11-year-old that's basically also following the Democratic candidates and asking some hard-hitting questions, and is more mature and very precocious for his age, and he is acting much, much better than most adults are in this political climate. And that's how I would like to end this part of the podcast. And now for a break and a word from potential sponsors. Hey y'all, this is TNFro, aka Felicia Baxter, a relative newbie to the podcasting game. In an attempt to continue to live my best life, it seems as if I always have some type of hustle going on. Traveling Vineyard, India Hicks, writing my book, which is titled Not My Family, dropped last week. All of this comes at a cost. It's not free. It takes effort to create a buzz and to create content. I just need one person to start the stampede to my site. One person or company to become a patron. One person to buy my book and proclaim it to be the best thing since sliced bread. So please navigate to http://patreon.podbean.com/thetalkingfro to donate to my podcast. And also navigate to www.feliciabaxter.com to purchase my book. In advance, if we don't speak, thanks for your support. So I'm sitting in my living room, um, imbibing upon something called the from the Baxter Brewing Company. I actually bought a 4 pack of gigantic beer while I was working in Maine last summer. And I picked it up because it said Baxter on the side. And I can truly say, even ice cold, this beer is kind of gross. But because it's alcohol, I'm not going to waste it. I do not think that I would actually carry this in my imaginary wineberry because I don't want anyone to gag. But if you really like a very hoppy tasting beer, the bootleg fireworks brand from the Baxter Brewing Company of Maine may be your zhuzh. But anyways, this part of Chatterbooks, I've been reading a lot of different things, and in the wake of 2 mass shootings and stabbings in the past 72 to 96 hours, I didn't really or want to talk too much about my sister, the serial killer, because I thought that was in poor taste. But I've written a couple of things, and I always want I'm like, I don't do free, and I just want to be paid to create. Um, I joined Vocal Plus, a new platform that allows you to write stories, and the more views that you get, the more you get paid. And I liked the copy where they basically talked about how their stories actually pay for their trips. Of course, I had to sign up for that. And this is also one of the first years in about 20 years that I'm not doing contract physician work because I don't want to continue to work and work so hard and not sleep and take the crap shifts when I really don't like doing that. I don't want to stay up all night. I don't want to answer the call about dosages of Tylenol. I'm not young anymore and I'm cranky and I just don't want to be paid for that. I got paid well. I'm grateful, but no. If I can get paid to do what I like and tell the stories and they make money, so be it. I joined a platform. It's called Fiverr, Fiverr. That's taken off of the British colloquialism for the £5, and also an American $5. And it's a great freelance platform where you can actually either purchase services to post to your blog or to tweet for you. This morning, I was approached by a woman of color to create a post for her blog. She gave me some very strict parameters. She says and she does own a great website. It's called www.themotherland.online. It is African American or African beauty presented in a very positive light. But there are these news captions where they actually have guest bloggers and they post about certain things. And in recent events, she wanted me to make a comment on what's going on in the border, women's rights, and the anniversary of the 400th year anniversary of the first arrival of slaves to our country. And I guess it provoked something in me, and I basically cranked out this piece in about an hour or less than an hour. She ended up giving me a tip, and I took centerpiece on what's in the news for her website, and it was absolutely amazing. And I wanted to read this to you because I'm actually pretty proud of it. The title is 1619, It Ain't Over. No Fat Lady Singing. The first documented American Africans arrived in the English colony of Virginia. The group recorded upon arrival as 20 and odd Negroes. This is from the 400 Years of African American History Commission Act. This was ordered and printed September 6, 2016. August 1619 would start a 400-year Holocaust of African American people. A Holocaust is defined as a distraction or a slaughter in on mass scale, especially that caused by fire. And in most recent history, it has been used to refer to the mass extinguishment of Jewish people by the Nazis from 1941 to 1945. But I counter that African Americans have been in a 400-year Holocaust with continued brutalization, terror, and slavery even after the Emancipation Proclamation. And we are still seeing trauma of mismanaged Reconstruction with the establishment and reign of the Klan and the lynchings that define an era. There continues to be mass incarceration of an entire generation of African Americans in this country. There has been torture at the hands of prison guards in places like Rikers, medical experimentation in the Tuskegee Project, in which hundreds of young African American men were withheld life-saving treatment for syphilis, which comes to mind. We are all survivors of these collective tragedies, and we all have post-traumatic stress disorder that we have to address. What is going on in the border now is just a pattern of behavior exhibited by white Americans from the time that first Africans stepped foot on our soil in Virginia to now. The current administration and several likewise individuals with or without hoods will stir up this misplaced zeal for white privilege as a means to get votes, to mask other political shenanigans, to take away women's rights, to control what happens to their bodies, to the dismantlement of Obamacare, to the mass defunding of scholarships to needy students in Alaska, and defund the 9/11 fund. What is going on in the border as we speak is simply a pattern of behavior that has existed in this country for the last 400 years, but they've expanded it to include all black and brown people. And they do it heartlessly, carelessly, and they bury it in political rhetoric so we won't see the truth. We should not overemphasize the year 1619 because this is one of the most talked and ingrained dates of historical fact in this country. It should be. However, there were Africans in the colony years prior to it, and there may have been Africans other than a servant class even present in the Americas and the West Indies, and in particular Bermuda at the time. By focusing on this one day, I don't want to completely overemphasize the importance by distorting other glaring issues that we have to address, but I point to it simply to say, for we have come far, but not far enough. It's taken us 400 years to get to where we are, give or take a couple of decades. But there's more work to do because as the political rhetoric goes up, the shenanigans that are happening in the back room continues to go up with the expansion of private I don't know what that means because I should have corrected that. I don't want to lessen the travesty that was the Jewish Holocaust, nor of the Japanese internment. These holding facilities for migrants, which are little more than concentration camps that we saw in Nazi Germany and during the Japanese internment. I don't want to demean or belittle the transgressions and the memories of these atrocities, and will continue to live on in the memory of the survivors. But I mentioned these as a precautionary tale of the work that needs to be done beyond the 2016 legislative history of the bill to commemorate the 400 years of African Americans. It is a good start, but we have to change the collective psyche of a country that still has so much work to be done, from the overhaul of our justice system, overhaul of the incarceration in prison systems, and how we treat immigrants that make us a country. Where is the Ellis Island for those dark black and of brown persuasion? Certainly not in those holding pens in South Texas. And I point out those things in the recent mass shootings as a means to what we need to protect. All of our citizens and all of our visitors. We can't do that with hate speech. We have to dig deeper and with sincerity help and protect those and everyone that wishes to be in these United States. And I firmly believe that in my spirit. I'm going to need to hopefully edit that if you want that to be reprinted. But that just speaks truth. There's so much work to be done. I'm so proud to be able to create and to be a part of the movement for change. And what are you doing to affect a change? Welcome back to the show and TNFro's Medical Minute. And again, I started this part of the post because I wanted to keep my hand in as far as medicine. I am more in the administration of medicine at this point in my life, and I write about it. And I am so grateful that I'm not forced to still practice at this time. I'm a hospitalist by heart. I think that's where I would have retired if I had not found my current position. Now, the past week, and I apologize for getting back to you guys so it took me so long, over a week to get back, but it's actually only August 8th. I posted about maybe this day or the day prior last week. And in that period of time, Robert F. Kennedy's granddaughter, she's not here anymore. It looks like she intentionally overdosed. And I think of my cousin, a young man full of potential that basically planned his exit too soon from this world. And it makes me sad because all of this was done on our watch. Both of these and many more young people are in pain, and they have issues that they think the end in suicide is an answer. And it makes me sad that as adults we could not have changed that. And their intent was to take their own lives, and that just makes me sad. There are just so many modalities that can help you that are out there. There's Talkspace, there's Doctor on Demand. I am known as the physician, thou shalt not talk me to death or I'll throat punch you, but there are other means to if you need to speak to someone, there are other ways to be able to do that. And I hope people will actually take advantage of that. And there's also the National Suicide Prevention Line. It's 1-800-273-8255, or you can send a lifeline to Twitter at 800-273-TALK. That is at 800-273-TALK or 1-800-273-8255. Also, what I wanted to address on this part of the episode is there are many, and in my job, I review cases where people want to have these big genetic testing for everything under the sun. Most of them are not there's no data to support that you need to have that much information, and you can't just get it tested if you don't have the counseling that's associated with it. 23andMe and FamilyTree.org and other organizations make it seem easy that you can get all of this information is right at your fingertips, and you can get it by a swab of your cheek. And in most cases, that is true. But what do you do with that information, or what is done with that information, is very questionable in most modalities. And I've just recently started seeing advertisements for a company called everlywell.com that has started to advertise how you can get genetic testing, and it basically can allow you to cure different food allergies. It seems like they use a combination. Somebody is actually counseling these people. I don't know if they're medically trained, if they're nutritionists, etc. But the way the commercial makes it seem is that you get these massive panels of tests. You find out that you're highly allergic to whatever food. You avoid that food and you feel better. Makes sense, right? And most people know that, or most people don't know that most of the genetic testing that you get from your allergist or even from your primary care doctor may not be as comprehensive as some of these panels that are available now to the general public. But it doesn't always mean that the commercial payers, etc., will actually come up with the cash for it. What we say is that you can have the test, we just ain't paying for it if we don't have all the data to support the usage. And on my last couple of shows, I was actually, I've been thinking about this for a while. I had heard during the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 mission and the walk of Neil Armstrong on the moon, they basically settled his malpractice suit with the hospital. It seems like after he had what appeared to be a minor procedure, he died. And it sounds like from cardiac tamponade, when the nurses pulled the electrodes to his biventricular ICD, that's mostly used to basically shock the heart into acting right. Sometimes you can have so many heart attacks or not enough oxygen gets to your heart, and it could just become a big floppy bag. So sometimes if you get these shockers to the ventricles, it'll actually shock it into acting right. Well, see, what had happened was the nurses removed the leads. He bled into the sac that surrounds the heart. It caused the heart not to be able, either it caused some type of fatal arrhythmia, or the heart wasn't able to contract and expand and get the blood to the rest of his body, and he died from cardiac arrest. I'm sure that there were many mistakes there, and I'm sure that the traditional journalistic channels may or may not cover it. But I started looking up something because I did an internship with NASA back in 1992, over 20 years, good gracious. But anyways, is it almost 30 years? Well, Lord, that's about right. Well, Lord. Anyways, that I was wondering about the medical angle, and I still have my space physiology book, but it was actually back in North Carolina at the time, and I was thinking, is there a higher incidence of cardiovascular diseases in astronauts? And evidently, there are. Go freaking figure. What they found back as soon as 2016, they basically wrote in scientific reports Apollo lunar astronauts are 4 to 5 times more likely to die from cardiovascular disease. The incidence of cardiovascular disease is very common in our population. It's a combination of genetics, lifestyle, environmental choices, and exposes to cardiotoxins. But what they associate the issue with the astronauts is once they leave orbit, they are no longer protected by the magnetic sphere. There are cosmic rays that seemingly affect the enzymes that should be protecting your heart. And the longer it seems that you stay out in space, then the longer your exposure to these cosmic rays and the longer your exposure to the deleterious effects of these cosmic rays. There have been widely held incidents of cardiovascular disease where one of the astronauts at the age of 43, James Irvin, started for his first heart attack. Everybody blew that off to say, nah, there's no more higher incidents in astronauts in the rest of the world. But in actuality, there was. And he passed away at the age of 61 with his second, third, or fourth heart attack at that time. And of course, I started looking this up secondary to Neil Armstrong's death. And then there was another astronaut by the name of Ron Evans. He died in his sleep at the age of 56. And someone from Florida State, of all places, said that they all had one very much thing in common. They all had flown in space, and two of them had actually walked on the moon. And they associated the cardiac atrophy and the cardiac diastolic function, the way the heart contracts and relaxes, and all of those gravitational transitions that you actually go through while you are in space are just completely off in these group of patients. So with that information in mind, what can be done, and are there any special medications that the astronauts should be on? Are there any immunomodulators that could actually help them? And are there exercises that they can actually do in space? Is there extra precautions that need to be taken while space travel is getting ready to take an uptick? And as humankind spends more and more time in space, what can we do to protect those people? And the nerd in me just thought that was pretty cool. And an issue or a disease that's actually near and dear to my heart, fibroids. Most people don't know, but back in 2015, at the age of, good Lord, how old was I? I was 46, 45 years old, never pregnant, never had any kids. I underwent a total abdominal hysterectomy. Took everything, cervix, my uterus, as well as my ovaries. I did not want any possibility of gynecological cancer. And if I could have had gotten a double mastectomy at that time, I would have done that also. But the reason why I had that is because of the rapid rate of growth of about 4 fibroids in and on my uterus. I had too many to count fibroids all through my uterine wall, as well as those massive softball-sized fibroids that gave me a uterus the size of a 25-week gestation. The pain and the blood loss and the anemia that I had suffered, even with going through the uterine artery embolization that Condoleezza Rice had gone through, I still had issues. I couldn't even get on an airplane and bend over without soaking through 2 double pads and a tampon. It was ridiculous. But anyways, this is fibroids are the most common gynecological tumor that there is. They're benign, but these things can cause significant blood loss, leading to blood loss, anemia, pain and disability, and days lost from work. The most conservative treatment is through hormone modulation, oral contraceptives, and even implanted progesterone only therapies. Aromatase inhibitors, antifibrinolytic agents, NSAIDs like Advil, Danazol, all of those things are not a cure, but they actually have inconsistent um, effects as far as controlling the medications and as the illness. And also, as I stated before, uterine embolization is a very good uterine sparing modality if you were thinking of ever having children. But if your fibroids are the size of mine, and you had as many as I did, you can't have this surgery 2 days later, get on a plane, walk through one of DFW airport without passing out. That's just me. Endometrial ablation is another controlling method. And then the final definitive treatment, of course, is hysterectomy. Most of what we know about fibroids is based on hormonal manipulation, but the specific genes that are dysregulated, believe it or not, there are genetic material that is within a certain group of women, or most women, that basically it gets broken and turned on. What genes are is serves as a blueprint for proteins and receptors and a hodgepodge of different things that the body regulates to make other things. Well, in fibroids, these genes are just screwed up, and they overmake smooth muscle. They overmake the capsule that surrounds the smooth muscle until you get these big giant fibroids that misshape your uterus or just basically erode through your uterus and cause massive bleeding. But these dysregulated genes can also open up new avenues for pharmaceutical intervention and ultimately lead to new strategies to prevention. And I'm thinking that some of the newer immunomodulators or certain custom therapies may be of benefit in the fight against fibroids. And I think that's pretty damn cool. Pretty damn cool, don't you? Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this part of the podcast, my daily affirmations. Well, most of you may realize that my podcast is not as scripted as I would like it to be. I'm working daily on organization and sequence, but as I was actually writing my affirmations, I realized that what I'm writing is kind of an explanation or affirming or an affirmation to myself why I create the podcast. I started the podcast and I started my WordPress blog because I realized that there's just a lot of negativity, and it seems like all of haters and people that want to spew hate had just been rampaging for the past several weeks, and we got the lead cheerleader of hate in the White House. But besides those things, is I affirm why I want to create. I received my first review this past week from Kirkus, and it was a little bit lukewarm, but it also is going to serve as a blueprint about how I'm going to improve on my next project. and I'm still working at it. I get a little bit out of shape because it's been so busy at my day job that haven't been able to focus on my work, or which started out as fun, but it's become such a part of me, and it is a part of me. I have to continue to make myself happy. No, I don't want to live in a bubble, but I am responsible for my own happiness. It's not up to my day job. It's not up to the markets or money. It is not the responsibility of someone else. I make my own happiness, because when I'm happy, or when I become elated, and when I become elated, that allows me to create. And with all the sad things in life, squelching things, I need to be able to continue my happiness. I know now that I have to craft my stories, because I actually want to support my travel so I can actually write more stories. And as I write more stories, that means I get paid more, and then I can actually travel more. My whole goal is to point out and share something fun every single day of this month, especially because it is my birthday month, and it's just the ride up to August 24th. I was planning on going back to my old stomping grounds in Charlotte at the Ritz. However, I think I'm going to flip that because if I actually go to Richmond, Virginia, and check out the Jefferson and their all-you-can-eat buffet, I may be able to share that experience with several of my friends. And I think that's actually going to work out even better. I can have a reading and a book signing kind of impromptu on my birthday, and that's because that's how I actually want to. That's my focus and my goal. I want to be around people that I love, and why not do that back in Virginia? And that ends my affirmations. I hope you enjoy them and you can write them into your own spirit. Well, that wraps up another episode of What is TNFro Reading. Join me next week as I explore other fascinating reads and review more podcasts. And also as I discuss more of my birthday weekend combination, first read or launch or delayed launch party for my book, Not My Family. Please remember to navigate to dalesangelsinc.com and explore all the newly updated sales offers, and also purchase some of the books that I have reviewed and spoken about this weekend and other weeks. And I want to leave you with this tidbit. I am still figuring out what I'm good at and what I'm capable of doing, and I'm not really relying on other people telling me that. And I got that from a Doctor's Field guest. I thought it was profound from a crazy 13-year-old. But anyways, be that as it may, there is validity in positive and negative comments, either asked for or unprovoked. And even in lukewarm reviews, just like I received from Kirkus reviews on Not My Family. But that's not what is going to define me. It's not going to stop me from living. It's not really going to change me from experiencing and liking things on their own merits, not just because someone directed me to do that. This past week has also seen hate is rampaging, and it seems to be out of control. And we can see it daily, almost minute by minute, spewing forth from the White House. But we still need to follow the example of our ever-present former President Obama when he says we have to reject the language from so-called leaders, bloggers, and even from the pulpit. Christianity has some of the most hateful people I've ever met in my life. And we reject that language that feeds upon fear and hate. And that's truly our words to live by. Words should promote growth, healing, inspiration, and encouragement. There was actually a story on the news this morning, CBS News, where a family, one of a nosy neighbor, left a note on her neighbor's house saying that her house is an eyesore and she needs to clean it up. He had no idea that this woman, a single mother, has 4 children and one of her children are disabled. She actually shared this on Facebook. Someone in the community saw it, and they all got together and basically cleaned up her house and made it presentable and bought supplies for those children. And one of the gentlemen says this was his way of healing because he had just lost a child a couple of weeks prior to that to the same illness that was afflicting her special needs child. And it got picked up in reports and all the well-wishers, and it all stemmed from a really hateful note put on this lady's door by a stranger, an anonymous stranger. And he had no idea what she was going through. But the great thing that I read about this is the reporter that picked up the story wrote this. He said, "Sticks and stones may break our bones, but words can inspire a community to action." I also would add, it also allows you to create life, and it should promote happiness and positivity. Your life is your own, and you should just live it. You shouldn't be driven by approval from everybody, because disapproval has its place too. It does suck, but you still gotta live. And that's just the bottom line. Even in spite of the stupidity and the hate and all of these things that are going on, we still have to live. And that's how I want to end this episode of my podcast. Please join me next week as I continue to live and share it with you, and I hope you are entertained by it. And also, don't forget, if you like what I'm saying, don't hesitate to leave a tip or to become one of my patrons. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks for your time, and have a great week, and keep reading.